A to Z Mysteries, Book Number 17, The Quicksand Question, by Ron Roy. Chapter 3. Josh burst through the barn doors first. Dink and Ruth Rose barreled in right behind him. Josh immediately pounced on the cookie tin. He opened it, then gasped. "Call the cops," he yelled. "I've been robbed." Dink grinned at his friend. "What did they take? Your brain?" "Worse," Josh said, peering into the empty cookie tin. "They took my cookies." "Hey, my piggy bank is missing," Ruth Rose said. "I left it right on my sleeping bag." Dink poked his hand into the opening of his sleeping bag. He felt around. "My money jar isn't here either," he said. Josh pulled open his sleeping bag. "Now I'm really mad," he said. "My money sock is gone." Josh looked at his friends. "Someone snuck in here while we were gone," he said. "Raccoons might have taken the cookies," Ruth Rose said, glancing around the barn. "And I read that crows sometimes steal shiny coins," Dink offered. Suddenly, Josh grinned. "No, it wasn't raccoons or crows," he said, wiggling his eyebrows. "I think it was two little monkeys." "The twins!" shouted Dink and Ruth Rose at the same time. The three kids charged out of the barn and raced across the yard. Josh stormed through the kitchen door and yelled, "Freeze!" Brian and Bradley were kneeling on the kitchen chairs, playing with a pile of coins on the table. On the counter were Josh's blue sock, Dink's peanut butter jar, and Ruth Rose's piggy bank. "Josh," cried Bradley, "look what we found in the barn." "It's pirate treasure," yelled Brian. "No, it's not. It's our treasure," Josh growled at his little brothers. Bradley made a face. "But we found it. Nobody was there." "This is special money," Dink told the twins. "We saved it for the ducks." "Why do ducks need money?" asked Brian. Ruth Rose explained how the money would be used to build a bridge so mommy ducks and baby ducks could cross the road safely. "Okay," the twins said together. "Now what about my cookies?" Josh asked, waving the cookie tin. "Give 'em back." The two little boys erupted in giggles. "We can't. They're in our stomachs," Brian crowed. The 5 kids ate breakfast, and then Josh told Bradley and Brian to go wake up their parents. Dink scooped all their coins into the cookie tin, while Josh and Ruth Rose cleaned up. Then Josh reached for Pal's leash, but Pal was already sitting by the door with his leash in his mouth. "Smart doggy," Josh said, as he clipped the leash to Pal's collar. Dink lugged the heavy cookie tin. Pal and the kids took Eagle Lane to Silver Circle, then crossed Main Street to the fire station. They saw Officer Fallon getting out of his cruiser in front of the station. "Morning, kids," the police chief said. "You're up early." He bent down and stroked Pal's soft ears. Dink held up the cookie tin. "We came to make a deposit." Officer Fallon grinned. He reached into his cruise and pulled out a jar of coins. "Me too." "Did you hear about the fire last night?" Ruth Rose asked. "Yes, I did," Officer Fallon said. "It was small, and I guess the fire department put it out easily. The question is, who started it?" "I saw a car's headlights there," Dink reported. "But that was before the fire." "How long before?" Officer Fallon asked. Dink thought back. "I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so." Officer Fallon set his coin jar on the roof of his cruiser. Then he pulled out his pad, flipped it open, and made a few notes. "Could this be a clue?" Ruth Rose asked. She pulled the partly burned wood from her pocket. "Where'd you find that, Ruth Rose?" he asked. "We went to the scene of the fire this morning," she told him. "This was in the ashes." Officer Fallon examined the 4 letters. "CO is usually short for company," he said, "but there should be a period after the O." "Maybe the period got burned off?" Ruth Rose said. Officer Fallon made a note on his pad. "Good detective work," he said to Ruth Rose. Josh's eyes lit up. "Maybe the wood was from a snake's cage," he said. "Don't pet cobra." They all laughed. "Well, let's add our money so we can save those ducks," Officer Fallon said, slipping his notebook into a pocket and reaching for his money jar. They walked into the fire station together. Somewhere a radio played softly. A clock on the rear wall said 9 o'clock. The Green Lawn fire engine was parked on the concrete floor. Next to it was a smaller truck with "Rescue" written on both doors. On the back wall were 3 doors. Gray metal lockers stood along another wall. Below the lockers was a row of rubber boots. Pal walked over and sniffed a boot. "Hello," Officer Fallon called out. "Anybody home?" One of the doors opened. A man wearing a dark blue uniform stepped out. "Who's there?" he said. "Officer Fallon and some friends," the police chief said, rattling his jar full of coins. "We brought more money." Dink held up the cookie tin. "This is getting heavy," he said. "Great," the man said. "Come on back here." The kids and Officer Fallon joined the man at the rear of the firehouse. The man walked over to another of the doors. He shoved it open and stepped inside. "Right in here," he said. Through the door, Dink could see a rug, a TV set, and several comfortable-looking chairs. "Where's the bank?" Josh asked, peering around the man. "Standing in the corner, right where it's always been," the man said, turning to look into the room. Except that the duck bank wasn't standing in the corner. The duck bank wasn't anywhere in the room. Chapter 4. "I can't believe it," the man said. "That bank was here last night. I know because I put money in it." "Would anyone have moved it to a different spot in the firehouse?" Officer Fallon asked. The man shook his head. "We kept it here in the TV lounge, so everyone would be reminded to drop coins in. Plus, the thing weighs a ton." Officer Fallon handed Josh his jar of coins and took out a notebook. "Did you put out that meadow fire last night?" he asked. The man shook his head. "Nope, that would have been Jake and Lenny." Officer Fallon wrote in his notebook. "Where would I find them?" The firefighter smiled. "Still snoozing in the other room," he said. "They should be getting up any time now." "Have them give me a call after they're awake," Officer Fallon said, slipping his notebook into a pocket. "No problem," the man answered. Officer Fallon and the kids walked outside. Pal lay next to the cruiser with his head on his big front paws. "I just thought of something," Dink said. "Maybe whoever lit that fire last night did it to get the man out of the firehouse." "I had the same thought," Officer Fallon said. "The fire could have been a diversion." "Yeah," Josh said, "so they could sneak in here when no one was around and steal the bank." "Who would do such a lousy thing?" Ruth Rosa said. "Someone who loves money and hates ducks," Josh said. "Could it have been the car I saw last night?" Dink said. "I saw those headlights right before the fire." "Very possibly," Officer Fallon said. An elderly man walked past with a dog on a leash. The man was tall and thin. The dog was short and round. They both had white hair. Pal whined and wagged his tail back and forth. The man let his little dog waddle over to Pal. "Hello," the man said. "This is Randolph. Is your Basset friendly?" Josh nodded. "Pal likes everyone." Pal sniffed the little dog, then licked his face. Randolph rolled over and wiggled his whole body. Any trouble here? The man asked, looking curiously at Officer Fallon. Just investigating a possible theft, Officer Fallon said. The man raised his bushy white eyebrows. Would it have anything to do with that crazy driver I saw last night? He asked. Officer Fallon took out his notebook again and flipped it open. Please tell me what you saw, he said. A fire engine woke me sometime after 1 o'clock, the man said. So I took Randolph outside for some fresh air. We were at the corner of Indian Way Road when a jeep came tearing past us up Main Street. The man held his hands a foot apart. Mr. Randolph by that much. Officer Fallon began writing in his notebook. You are Mr. Thaddeus Pocket, the man said, number 10 Indian Way Road. Were you able to read the jeep's license plate, Mr. Pocket? Mercy, no, the man said. It was speeding much too fast. Did you happen to notice the driver? Officer Fallon asked. Mr. Pocket shook his head. I'm sorry. My eyesight isn't wonderful anymore. There were 2 men in the jeep, but I don't remember the driver. Officer Fallon closed his notebook and began to put it away. Thanks anyway, Mr. Pocket. You've been very helpful, but I do remember the man sitting beside the driver, Mr. Pocket went on. You do? Officer Fallon opened his notebook again. Mr. Pocket grinned. Yes, but only because he was so odd-looking. The man in the passenger seat looked just like a giant duck.